Rain, mud, madness. The chief is screaming. Look at him, once a king, now a dog. His silk robe is a collection of wet rags that cling to his shivering frame. His gold staff, once a symbol of divine authority, is now a broken stick used to claw frantically at the earth. He is on his knees, his face smeared with red clay. He is eating the dirt as if it were manna from heaven. He howls at a moon that refuses to shine on his shame, his voice a ragged animal sound that chills the blood. The villagers watch from the safe, dark, rectangular shadows of their doorways. They shiver, they whisper. Where is his wealth? Where is his mind? Where is she? The girl, the ghost, the curse. Look at his hand, clutched tight, bleeding from the fingernails, holding a shred of shimmering violet silk that pulses in the dark with a heartbeat of its own. Thunder cracks, a bone snaps. The chief falls face first into the mire. Silence. Everyone gasped. The ancestors wept. But to understand how the lion became a carcass, we must go back to the morning the sun rose on a lie. The village of Okezie woke every morning to the smell of wood smoke and wet cassava, a heavy tropical dampness that clung to the skin like a wet blanket. The air was thick, tasting of the river that snaked around the community like a sleeping python. But for Sabrina, the morning air always tasted like ash. She was born thin, not the delicate thinness of a reed that sways in the wind, but the sharp, angular thinness of a broomstick. Her collarbones poked against her skin like trapped birds trying to escape their cage. Her face was a landscape of hollows and sharp points, eyes too large for her skull, a nose too sharp for her face. The village women at the stream were the architects of her sorrow. As they pounded their laundry against the smooth river stones, thwack, 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 their tongues moved faster than their hands. "Look at the shadow approaching," they would hiss as Sabrina neared with her clay pot. "If she stands sideways, she disappears. How can a woman have no hips? A woman without hips is a house without a foundation. No man can build a life there." They laughed, the sound sharp and jagged like broken glass. Sabrina would simply bow her head, the weight of their words heavier than the water in her pot. She was a cosmic error, a girl God had molded in a hurry on a Friday evening because he wanted to go home for the weekend. The rough scratch of a palm frond broom against the hard-packed sandy soil was the soundtrack of her life. Swish, swish, swish. Sabrina swept the compound of her late parents' hut every morning before the sun could fully claim the sky. Other girls in Okezie had skin that shone like polished mahogany, but Sabrina's skin was ashy and dry, no matter how much palm oil she rubbed into it. She moved like smoke, silent, unnoticed, unwanted. Yet the villagers were blind. They saw the dry, brittle shell, but they did not see the pearl hidden in the dark center of her soul. On her deathbed, Sabrina's mother had gripped her hand with a strength that defied her failing lungs. Her mother's hand felt like dry parchment paper, cold and trembling. She pulled Sabrina close, her voice a rattling whisper that smelled of sickness and ancient forbidden secrets. "Sabrina," she whispered, "you are not cursed. You are a vessel. You carry a light that most men are too blind to see. Listen to me. Any man who marries you will rise from the dust. He will touch sand, and it will turn to gold. He will touch water, and it will turn to wine. Your presence is a rain that makes the desert bloom. But listen to my final breath. He must choose you for your heart, not your face. If a man chooses the vessel only for the gold it brings, the gold will turn to lead in his belly, and the lead will pull him into the abyss." Sabrina carried this secret like a heavy stone in her belly. She was painfully,
almost foolishly kind. When a villager bumped into her and spilled their water, it was Sabrina who knelt in the dust, her knees scraping against the sharp, sun-baked stones, apologizing for being in their way. She planted yams behind her hut, fetched water alone, and danced in the moonlight to music only her heart could hear. She was waiting, not for a prince, but for a man with eyes that could see in the dark. The Yam Festival finally arrived, bringing with it the heavy, primal thud-thud-thud of skin drums that made the very air vibrate. The village was a riot of color: indigo wrappers, red beads, yellow ochre. Men drank palm wine until their eyes turned the color of a bruised sunset. Sabrina stood near the edge of the forest, hidden by the rough, protective bark of the udala tree. The air smelled of roasted goat meat, fermented corn, and the sweet, dizzying scent of the forest lilies. She watched the couples dancing, their bodies close, their laughter a language she didn't speak. Her heart squeezed with a rhythmic, painful ache. Then the impossible happened. Okezie, a palm wine tapper with skin smelling of fresh sap and honest sweat, walked toward her. He didn't swagger like the arrogant chiefs who wore their wealth like armor. He walked with the steady, patient pace of a river. The village went silent. The drums seemed to skip a beat. Why was the handsome Okezie, a man who could have any maiden, walking toward the scarecrow? "Hello," he said, his voice deep and warm, vibrating like a low drum. Sabrina looked behind her, sure he was speaking to a ghost. "Me," she whispered, her voice cracking like a dry twig. "Yes," he replied, his eyes soft. "The noise is too loud there. It is full of people who talk, but say nothing. But here it is quiet, like the first star of the evening, like you." He handed her a cup of palm wine. The calabash was cool, condensation dripping onto her fingers like tears of joy. They sat in the shadows for hours, talking not of beauty or wealth, but of the way the moon influences the tide, and the way the earth sighs after the first rain. They married 3 moons later. The village laughed until their ribs ached. "The lion has married the mouse," they shouted. "Okezie has traded his eyes for a bag of salt." But Okezie just held Sabrina's hand, his grip firm and anchoring. "Let them talk," he told her, stroking her coarse hair. "They see a hut with a leaking roof. I see a palace made of light." The prophecy woke up 2 months into the marriage. It was as if the earth itself recognized Okezie's kindness. His palm wine became the sweetest in the region, a nectar that men traveled miles to taste. Traders from the city begged for his supply. While digging a simple trench for yams, he found a pot of ancient cowries and gold dust buried by a forgotten ancestor. He bought land. He bought a car. The villagers stopped laughing. They now stood at his gate with their hats in their hands.
Sabrina was happy, not because of the motorcycle or the new roof, but because for the first time she was visible. But in Okezie, happiness is like a morning mist. The sun of jealousy always burns it away. The night of the storm was a nightmare of sound and shadow. The sky was the color of an old bruise, and the wind screamed through the thatch like a grieving mother. Sabrina woke to a cold bed. The side where Okezie slept was empty, the sheets barely retaining his warmth. The front door was banging against the wall, bang, 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 rhythmic and hollow. Okezie was gone. There were no footprints in the churned-up mud, no signs of a struggle, just a terrifying emptiness. She ran into the rain, her wrapper soaking and heavy, screaming his name until her throat tasted like iron and her lungs burned. The villagers said spirits took him. They said he had climbed too high and the gods had pulled the ladder. But gods don't leave boot prints in the mud or hide ropes in the bushes. Men do. Jealous men who couldn't stand to see a tapper become a king. Sabrina fell into the rain, the water freeze in her bones, but it could not wash away the fire of pain in her chest. 2 years of gray, stagnant skies followed. Sabrina became a statue of grief, a ghost haunting her own home. She sat by her door every evening, her eyes fixed on the forest path, waiting for a silhouette that never appeared. But the village had a nose for gold. They knew the secret now. The ugly girl was not a girl. She was a portal. She was a key to a vault of heaven. The mockery turned into a twisted form of worship. Men who once spat when she passed now brought her firewood and fat goats, their eyes tracking her every move like hunters tracking a wounded deer. They lined up like vultures, smelling of cheap cologne and the sour sweat of desperation. Dele the fisherman was the most persistent vulture. He had a tongue coated in honey, hiding a heart full of poison. He would sit beside her compound every evening, slowly peeling an orange with a sharp silver knife, the citrus scent filling the air, masking the smell of his rotten intentions. Sabrina, he would croon, handing her a slice of the fruit. Okezie is a ghost. The forest has eaten his bones. Why do you cry for a shadow? Let me be your substance. Let me be the wall that protects you from the wind. He would rub his eyes with salt water before he arrived, so they would shine with fake tears. Sabrina, tired of the silence and the constant pressure of the circling men, eventually whispered yes. The omens were there, loud and clear, but Sabrina was a woman who wanted to believe in the goodness of others. The village madman, Okezie, ran past her gate one morning, his eyes wide and wild. He stopped, pointed a dirt-kicked finger at Dele and screeched, "He eats with 2 mouths, one for the food you cook and one for the lies he tells the moon. The fisherman is building a net and you are the fish." Sabrina simply looked away, apologizing to Dele for the madman's outburst. Later, a small child refused to take a sweet from Dele's hand, crying that his poem felt cold like a dead lizard. Sabrina scolded the child for his rudeness. She even dreamed of a goat feeding a leopard, thinking the leopard's purr was a song of gratitude. She woke up sweating, wiped her face, and went to cook Dele's breakfast. This is the tragedy of the good heart. It assumes everyone else is playing by the same rules of love. Dele married her, and the wealth flooded in like a broken dam. His nets, once full of holes and seaweed, now pulled up fish the size of small sharks and crabs with shells that shimmered like polished brass. He became the richest man in 3 villages. But money is a magnifying glass. It only makes the heart's true nature larger. As Dele's pockets grew heavy, his soul grew brittle. He bought starched lace that rustled like dry leaves when he walked, and wines from across the sea that tasted of wood and ancient berries. He sat in the center of the compound, Sabrina's ancestral compound, drinking from crystal, while Sabrina was forced to sit on a low stool, drinking rainwater from a cracked calabash. The feast of betrayal happened 6 months into the marriage. Dele brought home a new woman, a girl from the city with skin like shea butter and hips that swayed like palm fronds in a hurricane. He ordered Sabrina to cook a feast for them. He sat at the head of the table, his new woman on his lap, while Sabrina moved back and forth from the kitchen, her thin arms shaking under the weight of the heavy iron pots. "Look at her arms," the new woman laughed, pointing at Sabrina. "They are like the legs of a spider. How can you stand to have such a creature in your house, Dele?" Dele swirled his wine, his eyes cold. He said, "She is the help,"
he said loud enough for Sabrina to hear. "She is a lucky charm, nothing more. You don't fall in love with a rabbit's foot, my dear. You just keep it in your pocket until the luck is yours. Sabrina is a cosmic joke, an ugly clay pot holding sweet water. I drink the water, but the pot belongs in the dirt." Sabrina dropped a plate. It shattered. The sound was like a bone breaking. Dele didn't yell. He simply looked at her with a disgust so deep it felt like a physical blow. He told her, "I have bought a mirror for the bedroom. Not for you, for her, so she can see her beauty. Do not look into it, Sabrina. Your face might crack the glass and ruin my investment." Sabrina apologized. She knelt and picked up the broken pieces of the plate, her fingers bleeding, apologizing for her own heartbreak. She stayed in the kitchen, watering the weeds of his arrogance with her tears, thinking if she was just a little kinder, he would remember the woman he promised to protect. The first cut came on a Tuesday. Dele claimed a bag of gold coins was missing from his chest. He didn't look for it. He simply pointed at Sabrina. "You stole it," he said, his voice flat. "I would never," she gasped, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who else?" he sneered. "You think because you bring the luck you own the wealth? You are nothing. You are the bridge I walked on to cross the river. And who remembers the stones of the bridge once they are on the other side? Pack your mat. Sleep with the goats. The luck has already entered the walls of this house. I don't need the vessel anymore." The air in the compound grew so heavy it felt like breathing under 10 feet of water. Sabrina didn't fight. She didn't scream. She simply broke. She walked out of the gate, past the madman who shook his head in a silent, "I told you so," and into the forest of whispers. The trees here were ancient, their roots twisting like knotted arthritic veins above the black soil. The temperature dropped suddenly, freezing her sweat on her skin. She wasn't looking for magic. She was looking for a place to stop existing.
But the forest had a memory. When kindness is a crime, the world offers only 2 choices: die or become a weapon. What will Sabrina do? Watch out for part 2.